concerning an organization unique in aviation history, an organization whose volunteer members are drawn from all walks of life. These are ordinary, everyday American citizens who every day perform the out of the ordinary in public service to their country. It's the story of an organization whose grassroots go back to the Minutemen at Lexington. But it's also the story of tomorrow, an organization with young men and women, the CAP cadets, who daily are receiving on-the-job training in future American citizenship. I am proud to be the National Commander of Civil Air Patrol and delighted to dedicate this film to those thousands of Civil Air Patrol members all across the United States who daily give of their time in public service in the best tradition of Civil Air Patrol and the United States Air Force.
Listened to the sound, the heartbeat. And to him, it said, you can do it if you try. And the young man added another chapter to aviation history by flying alone from New York to Paris. Yes, Lindbergh made it, and he made the world smaller for all time to come. And as aviation began to capture the imagination of men everywhere, more and more Americans listened. And they heard an invitation to become a part of this great drama of the sky. First a handful, then hundreds of average citizens began to identify themselves with the sound of aviation. These were the nation's private pilots, men and women from every walk of life who wanted to fly for the fun of it. Yes, private flying caught on, and the number of weekend pilots began to be reckoned in the thousands. And all the while, these enthusiasts were learning about takeoffs and landings for the fun of it. They were unwittingly building a civilian air reserve unparalleled in aviation history. Well, this is their story. The story of the people and the planes and the heartbeat of the Civil Air Patrol. This is Anytown, USA. The time? The late 1930s. It was a quiet time in the lives of most Americans, perhaps as quiet as we shall ever know. And yet, even then, from across the sea, a faint, ominous sound began to reach these shores, and it was the sound of dictators on the march. And as the volume of the sound increased, so did the realization that America might once again have to take up arms in the defense of freedom. Many leaders with intimate knowledge of private flying had long been convinced that pilot owners could be of invaluable service in time of emergency. And they were also convinced that in order to function effectively, this group must be organized on a national basis, ready for national service. Much opposition was first to be overcome, but finally, with the establishment of the Office of Civilian Defense, provision was made for a Civil Air Patrol to be organized on a voluntary basis and to carry out such missions as the government might direct. The date, December 1st, 1941. Events moved swiftly, and a few days later, the President asked Congress for a declaration of war. Many pilots, of course, entered upon active military duty. Others, not accepted by the services, began voluntary training as members of the Civil Air Patrol. Flying for the fun of it became a fond memory. And even the drone, the sound of their engines, seemed to take on a more serious pitch as private pilots began to function as members of a team. And all across the land, the tempo increased as factories sprang into life, turning out goods of war. People everywhere rose to the challenge. The sleeping giant had awakened. And then word came through from Washington that the Army Air Corps would welcome volunteers to take over some of the more routine, but nonetheless vital, U.S. patrol mission. Could Civil Air Patrol lend a hand? Well, the answer was immediately flashed back to Washington from every corner of the land. CAP personnel ready and waiting for specific mission assignment. And for a period of several months during the early part of the war, Civil Air Patrol flew as Army Air Corps' junior partner. Assignment. CAP pilots, observers, and ground personnel were faithful to their trust. Many performed courier service. Others scanned millions of square miles of timberland as part of a national forest protection program. Those assigned submarine spotting duty covered every mile of the United States coastline, alerted the anti-submarine command hundreds of times, actually dropped bombs or depth charges against 57 enemy craft. And for outstanding service to the nation, the War Department awarded more than 800 air medals to members of the Civil Air Patrol. And the end of hostilities marked just the beginning of a brand new chapter in CAP's record of service. Recognizing the value of this organized group of volunteers, the Congress, in creating a separate military arm, enacted legislation making Civil Air Patrol the auxiliary of the United States Air Force. And CAP members, proven under wartime conditions, established new records of public service by logging more hours on search and rescue missions than pilots of all the other rescue agencies combined. And floods and fires and other disasters have always found CAP members eager to help their fellow citizens. Yes, from Arctic cold to tropic heat, no spot too remote, no night too dark for these volunteers. Practice makes perfect, and you can bet this air-ground team had plenty before being assigned disaster patrol. Even so, razor-sharp judgment and split-second coordination is required in a situation like this, where the slightest miscalculation could spell tragedy. Yes, the picture's a little dark, but you don't need very much light to see that this team rates the term professional. As a result of this widespread activity, the CAP radio network, both fixed and mobile, became the largest and most extensive in the world. Vitally important now, invaluable, should the nation once again be called upon to defend the Stars and Stripes. Of major significance to the program are some 36,000 cadet members. These are young men and women, 14 to 18, representing every one of America's 50 states, and the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico. They too listen to the heartbeat, and as Civil Air Patrol cadets, they're beginning to comprehend its meaning. For aviation's message is now more complex. It requires trained professional interpretation. Mastering the principles of flight, while important, is not sufficient. In today's world, young people need to understand aviation's tremendous political, economic, and sociological impact. For cadets who complete minimum requirements, Civil Air Patrol offers 2 weeks at one of a number of Air Force bases. It's CAP's summer encampment program, and no sooner do they touch down at their home away from home than the cadets are all set to go aloft again. This time it's a jet, and this lad's in for a thrill few of his elders know. And meantime, the young ladies are having a grand time as they discover some of the falls and pitfalls of parachuting. One of the really top events on CAP's calendar is the International Air Cadet Exchange, which each year sends a limited number of outstanding male cadets to Canada and Europe, the Middle East, and South America. And as part of the same program, air-minded youngsters from other lands visit the United States. Less than 150 CAP cadets are selected for this honor, and to clear the first hurdle, each young man must maintain a high average in his CAP aviation education courses. And by the way, to give you an idea of the value of Civil Air Patrol training, 10% of a recent Air Force Academy graduating class were former CAP cadets. As the lads are carried swiftly across the Atlantic, perhaps they're thinking of the time when they may earn the silver wings of an Air Force officer and be assigned to fly future CAP cadets across the 7 seas. In addition to a rare chance to visit world-famous landmarks, the cadet exchange affords these young men an opportunity of meeting some of the people of other lands face-to-face, in keeping with the President's person-to-person program. The International Air Cadet Exchange is an adventure in friendship and understanding. And now, a new sound is heard in the world as giant missiles race skyward. At this moment in history, when science moves ahead with incredible speed, Civil Air Patrol looks toward the future, toward greater opportunity for service to the nation. In keeping with the times, CAP has far-reaching plans to extend its influence in tomorrow's new dimension, aerospace. And in order to move quickly in this rapidly changing world, Civil Air Patrol leaders are constantly reviewing every phase of CAP's program. Amateur rocketry, space science, and allied subjects are now being accorded major emphasis. For Civil Air Patrol educators are convinced that a broad understanding of the significance of these developments will materially assist young men and women in becoming more responsible citizens of the space age. And so, standing on the threshold of tomorrow, these young minds in the making lift their eyes toward new horizons. And perhaps theirs will be the vision to penetrate the darkness of man's inhumanity to man and help lead the world into the brilliant sunshine of fellowship toward new heights of achievement.